And welcome to the inaugural OCR Lounge. It's going to be a podcast for our student athletes, our coaches, our athletic alumni, and our fans, where we're going to bring the heart of MRA athletics right to your screen or listening device. So stay tuned as we join Coach Lipscomb today in the lounge. Coach Lip, welcome to the show.
Glad to be here. Glad to be here.
A lot of things have transpired 365 days ago where you were an assistant baseball coach and now you're the head baseball coach. A lot of momentum I know that's going with our program right now, a lot of energy that's going into that. And we'll talk about that later in the show, but what I want to get into mainly for our listeners and our viewers is get into your story. And then I want to get into your successes, and then the last part is your signature, like what makes you stand apart. That's kind of how we're going to frame this up today. So let's summarize your coaching journey. So take us back to way back when. And a lot of coaches I got into coaching because of XYZ, or I'm a coach because my dad was a coach. So take us on a journey into Coach Lip's baseball journey.
Yeah, I always grew up loving sports. I played for my uncle in high school. He coached me as a head football coach and a head baseball coach. Got the opportunity to go and walk on at Delta State and made the team and played a little bit up there for a few years, from I think 95 to 98 were the years that I was up there. Started out under Boo Marchant, and well, actually not Boo Marchant, Boo Ferris was around.
That's right.
But Coach Marchant was there, and then Coach Kennison took over, and it was really, I would say between my uncle and Coach Kennison is where I really began to understand that, you know, my love for the game of baseball was something that I wanted to do. And from there, once I graduated, I went back home. I started coaching. My first year of coaching was at Trinity Episcopal Day School.
That's in Natchez, right?
In Natchez, where I'm from, under David King. Coached there, and then I transferred over to Adams County Christian School, which is another school in Natchez, where me and a guy that I actually played with at Delta State coached together for 1 year, and then I took over the head coaching job there for a year. And that was probably my first official head coaching job, was my second year at Adams County Christian School. Had a really great year. Finished in the semifinals. Back then, it was known as the NPSA, and there was only 3 classifications, and we were in there with Jackson Prep, JA, Park Lane, Hillcrest. So it was a
with the big dogs.
It was with the big dogs, and it was kind of funny because I was like, you know, I was the young guy. I was fresh out of college. All the coaches in the league at that time were very well known, had a lot of experience, and they really did not like coming down to Natchez. They thought it was like the other side of the world, based off, because they were all right there in the metro.
That's right.
But we were very talented, and you know, it was kind of neat playing against those guys. And here I was, just a young guy out of college, and but we had a great season. From there, I got married in 2000, moved up to the metro area, and I went to Manchester, and actually was hired by a guy who was previously the headmaster at Adams County Christian School when I was in high school, and he hired me, so there was kind of a connection there. And I was at Manchester for 8 years.
I was the head coach, right?
I was a little bit of everything there. When I first
Swiss Army knife.
I really was. When I first got there, I was the head junior high football coach, assistant baseball coach the first year. Next year I took over, I was still the head junior high football coach, took over as head baseball coach, and did that for probably 2 years as the head baseball coach. And then Mike Sumlin, who was our AD, head football coach, left. And we hired a guy to come in, and at that time I became the AD. So at that time I was teaching school, I was the AD, I was the head baseball coach, I was offensive coordinator for the high school football. I wasn't coaching junior high anymore, so that was a little bit of glory. And then about 2 years in there, next thing I know, I'm the head football coach.
Wow.
So
You're doing it all.
I was head football, I was head baseball, I was athletic director, I was teaching 4 classes during the day of history, and I still taught driver's ed during the summer. So I mean, it was just
When did you sleep?
I don't know if I did. I'll be honest with you. I went from 0 to 100 in about that third, fourth year there.
Wow.
Did that for a few years and then gave up the head football position because I was like, this is just too much. I can't do this.
Yeah.
And remained as the AD, head baseball. Got out of it, decided to get out of it for a year. I think like I said, I loaded my plate so much, I got out of it for a year. Was selling insurance for New York Life. When an old friend of mine, Trip McCarty, who was the junior high football coach at MRA, he called and said, hey man, would you like to get back in it? And I said, I would love to. And so next thing you know, I show up at MRA, and I think the fall of 2008, was his defensive coordinator in junior high football. It's the first year I ever coached track.
Oh, wow.
And I remember Coach DeWeese.
That's awesome.
Coach DeWeese asked me, he said, you know much about track? And I said, Coach DeWeese, all I know is when the gun's shot, run as fast as you can, hang a left. That's all I can do. So he said, well, I might need you to do that for a year, and then we'll get you into baseball the next year. And so, of course, we did.
Wow.
2010, we were in baseball. 2009, 2010 was my first year of baseball. Finished that season serving as the, I guess, acting head coach of the championship game. It was kind of neat.
Yeah, I remember that. I do remember that.
I had a coach get thrown out, and he calls the head coach to get to the dugout and stuff. Before you know it, I'm on the field, which didn't bother me because I was always a head coach before I came there.
That's right.
And, but anyway, did that, and then tried to get the job after that.
Yeah.
In 2010, after the 2010 season, and a guy by the name of Alan Pavette came into my life. And at that time, it was at the time I was ready. I was pretty upset about it,
Mm-hmm.
not getting the position. It was the first time I did not get the job when I applied
Yeah.
for something, and so it kind of hurt my ego a little bit. But there was no doubt God put Alan Pavette in my life at that time. He knew nobody down here.
Right.
I was going through a divorce.
He was from Memphis.
He was from Memphis. Yeah. I was going through a divorce. In fact, and we bonded. And before you knew it, 15 years down the road, we coached together, and I had numerous opportunities to leave, and I chose to keep staying. Learned a lot from him, and here we are now, year 17 of MRA.
Wow.
Getting ready to be my first year as the head coach, which kind of feels all new again because it's been so long since I've been head coach.
Yeah, being able to do it your way. I think
Right.
there's a lot to say about that. I want to intercede right here. I want to go back to your New York Life deal.
Yeah.
How long were you at New York Life?
I was only there probably maybe 6 months, really.
What about it just was like, no, not me?
Well, the crazy thing is I probably made more money than I ever did in that period of time. But it was, the hardest part is you were constantly starting over every month.
Right.
You had to go find somebody. You had to go find something.
Yeah.
And that was fine. I don't mind going and talking and meeting people, but the one thing that I did miss more than anything, and I think this is the reason why I love what I do, is the relationships with kids.
Mm-hmm.
Building relationships has been one of the biggest things that I think is what I probably hang my hat on when I'm coaching. It's just building those relationships and being there for those guys.
Yeah, I think when you go back and you say that maybe 15 years ago, right, being a player's coach was not a cool thing, right?
Yeah.
It was a arm and hammer, iron fist type deal. Where today's athlete, it's turned into those relationships that you're talking about. You got to know and meet them in the middle, make deals with them, if you will, of like, hey, I need 6 hours of your week. I don't give you a Friday off or something.
Right.
But it goes back to that Zig Ziglar thing. Like, they don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
Absolutely. And I think some of that, I mean, don't get me wrong, I enjoyed my years at Delta State and really playing for Coach Kennison, but like you said, in those years, it was pretty much it was hardcore. I mean, there's no doubt he brought out the best of me every day. He challenged me every day. But the personal side of the relationship that we had really didn't begin to escalate until after I graduated, moved on, and was a coach.
Right.
And it was like once I was coaching, it was like he was a completely different person to me. It's like you saw the softer side. You saw this side that he was willing to do anything for me. And because of that, I think that's what drove me to be who I was. because playing for my uncle in high school was kind of the same way. I knew I wasn't getting any privileges. I was going to be the one that was going to get hammered anytime somebody had to get on to, because, you know, we were blood, and he knew I could take it. But I knew just from those experiences that I wanted to be more of a player's coach, to the extent to where, you know, that they at least could come and talk to me at any point. Didn't mean that, you know, it was just going to be free reign and lots of fun.
Right.
You still have to have that discipline. You still have to have that organization. And I think that's probably been one of the biggest things I've been able to kind of merge together.
Well, here, I think you already answered this question, but this is kind of a staple, is why do you coach? You know, we talked about New York Live, we talked about getting out of it. I had a similar instance at Tower Loan, but I spent 2 days at Tower Loan, and I was like, I'm not doing this.
Yeah.
It's about relationships. But what about it, about the baseball diamond, that kind of gets you going? You've been a head coach, you've been an assistant coach, you've been an AD, you've been in all these different sports. But it seems like your sanctuary is that diamond.
Yeah.
Why is that?
You know, I guess it's the one game I just fell in love with. I can remember when I was growing up, I was always a smaller kid, and I was always told, you're small. And baseball is a game to me that if you can play the game, you can get away with being small. And I just think I always played with that chip on my shoulder. And I love the fact that it was not only a team sport, but it was a very individualistic sport as well.
Absolutely.
And so I knew that I could bring something to the table, and I just fell in love with it. I think my family, you know, my uncle played at Mississippi State back when he was growing up. My mom was a big softball player. She was always on, you know, playing softball and church league and doing things. So I mean, I just grew up on the field, and as it began to grow, I just, you know, football was fun. I played football, but it really wasn't until my junior or senior year in high school before I really was like, you know what, I can be pretty good at this too.
Right.
But I was so small. I mean, I can remember my freshman year, I was so worried about not being 100 pounds playing against, you know, these high school kids, that I put a 5-pound weight in my britches to get on the scales to make sure I was getting over that 100 pounds.
That's amazing.
I didn't want to be on the roster as a 100-pound freshman.
Yeah, I'm gonna be 105.
Yeah,
I'm gonna be 110.
I'm gonna be whatever it is. But it was like once it was taken away from me, almost. I had surgery on my shoulder, and I missed about half a season.
Yeah.
I realized, you know what? It's as long as I go hard and go fast, it don't matter how big I am, I'm gonna have fun.
Yeah.
And that's when I really started liking football. But baseball's just always been there. I enjoy playing it. I can't get enough of it. I mean, even though I coach for a living, I go and coach every summer. I mean, I practically live in Hoover or Atlanta, Georgia, coaching some of the highest levels, because I just love to compete.
Yeah, I think that's one of those cool things, that the love of the game, whether it's football, whether it's basketball, whether it's baseball, soccer, some kids it's lacrosse, some kids it's swimming, finding that love at an age and then mastering it, and then finding out you love it enough to move on and pursue a profession in it. So that's really cool. Here's something I want to ask to you. It's what does success look like in your program? So you've been a head coach before, you've been an assistant, you've been an AD, you've coached all these different sports, you've worked in with New York Life, you've been in a place where you have to go and deal with real people, right, on a business level. But what does success look like in Chad Lipscomb's baseball program?
You know, it's kind of neat that you asked me that, because that was the first thing I did with my seniors. Is I brought in their parents and them and sat them down, and one of the first things is, what's going to make this year successful for you? And hearing their answers, you know, was kind of unique in a way, because each one of them had something, but everything was about a statistic, you know. And after hearing them say those things, I would say, okay, well, let me ask you this: if we don't meet that statistic, does that mean you got a failure? Does that mean your senior year was worthless? And when I said that to them, that was kind of like an eye opener to them, that it's not all about the numbers. You know, and so for me, success in our program, and what I want hopefully all our kids, is no doubt, you know, every year we want to play for a state championship. That's a given. I mean, you have to have that kind of goal out there to be the best. Because if you're playing sports and you're not competing to be the best, then why are you competing? And so that's one of the things that is a given. But the other thing is, it's just how can you be successful? What is that success to you? Is success to you, hey, being the best teammate that you can be each and every day, no matter what the consequences are? Is the best teammate, just knowing your role of what, and accepting your role? I think today's world, everybody wants to be that person, or wants to, but they don't know what it takes to be that person. Everybody wants to be on the best team, but, are they capable of being on the best team? Everybody wants to go play, all my players, they all want to play college baseball. And guess what? Maybe 5 might. Every graduating year, you might have anywhere from 3 to 5. And there might be some graduating years don't have any.
Yeah.
And so it's just trying to get them to understand that success is not something that you just reach out and grab. Success is something that you can feel. It's something that you enjoy. To me, if you're having fun and you're enjoying being a part of something, then that's successful. Then your season was successful. You can say, hey, I gave it my best, I got something out of it, I built relationships, whatever it may be. To me, as long as you're having fun, then you're having success. Because as soon as you're not having fun, and it's becoming more of a job or more misery, or you're so worried with anxiety because you're not meeting the numbers that you are wanting to meet, then you're not being successful.
I love what you said there, though. You gotta reach out and grab it. You can feel it.
Yeah.
Defining what success is in your program, but success, I think it's one of those things you just said, like they go after the numbers. What's my AB? What's my slugging percentage? How many stolen bases can I have? What's my ERA? There are so many numbers, and look, baseball's a numbers game. If you go watch Moneyball, that is a numbers game, numbers driven. But as far as high school's related, like you got to be out and I love how you said that. You got to be able to feel it.
You do. Because like I said, baseball is a game of failure. There is no other sport that I know that you can go 3 for 10 and make millions of dollars.
That's right.
It's just impossible.
I was just thinking about that.
It's a game of failure. You're going to fail more times than you're going to ever succeed.
And strike out.
100%. I told my son all the time, Caleb, when he was coming up, every time he would come up in a situation, it'd be like the game on the line, and he was the last about it, whatever. I always tell him, you want to be in this position.
Yeah.
You want to be in it. Every time you want to be in it. And you're not going to win it every time. But you want to be that guy.
That's right.
You want to be able to be that guy. Don't want somebody else to be in that position. You want it. And as long as you want to be in that position and you believe you can get it done, you'll have more success, but you're still going to fail more.
Yeah.
And so to me, that's just what it is. You got to understand that you're going to fail at this game, and if you're worried about the numbers, if you're fixated about where you are in the lineup or how many at bat, like you said, it's going to be miserable.
Yeah.
And I think this year was probably the first time I've started seeing someone really realize that. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of in my son, watching him at Hines. He's not had any offers yet to go play at the 4-year level, but he's very comfortable where he's at, and he's like, Dad, you know what? I'm just going to go have fun this semester. He says, I know I'm going to end up being a civil engineer more than likely. He said, if it's time to hang up cleats, it's time to hang up cleats, but I'm just going to have fun. And this fall, he had the best fall he's had in a while, and it showed.
Isn't that amazing?
And it's amazing. That's why I told him, I said, it's amazing when you just go have fun. You don't have to stress anymore.
Well, and you take the pressure off yourself to just go, and for me, it's like going back to that 7-year-old that's on a rec baseball team that's going and just enjoying it, wondering, hey, what's the snack afterwards?
That's it. That's all.
What's the snack afterwards? And I think you can start seeing that in your team now. Like I've noticed that in fall, they're looser, their camaraderie, and it's how they carry themselves. Like to go back to what you just said, they want to be in that position of, like, I want the last at bat.
Yeah.
I want the ball with, I want to be on the mound with 3 balls, 2 strikes, and then call me out of the pen to go finish this off. You can see that.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I think, coming into this fall, I felt like we had started losing a little bit. And at first, I think they had a hard time grasping that, hey, I want you to have fun. Yeah. Go relax and have fun. Because we've been kind of so tied up a little bit and held kind of with the reins pulled on us.
Yeah.
And so I've had to try and loosen that up as much as I can and try to entice a little bit. But I do think by the end of this fall, we really got to having some fun. And just the energy's there.
Yeah, you can see it.
And I want them to have the swag.
Yeah.
I think to be a great athlete, you have to know the difference between being cocky and confident. And I want you to be as close to that line as you can.
That's right. That's right. Well, let's go into this. From all the positions that you've had, What is your biggest, how can I frame this up? What have you learned about yourself most as a leader through all these positions? Because now you've been a leader at, say, a smaller school, to now you're the head baseball coach at the largest independent school in the state of Mississippi. What have you learned about yourself as a leader up to this point? What's your leading style? Like, how do you lead?
I think the two biggest things for me is one, and this is something I've kind of just, I don't know where I picked it up on, hearing somebody say it before, but being a listener. Don't think you always have to have the answer, because more than likely you don't have the answers. God's the only one that has all the answers, and so just being a listener. And the way I think about that sometimes is, if I feel like I'm trying to solve the problem for somebody when I know I'm not the person to be able to solve it. I just have to remind myself, hey, remember God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth. If He gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth, undoubtedly listening is a little bit more important. So that's one of the things that I try to instill is be willing to listen to my players, listen to my fan base, listen to my peers, whoever it is.
Not saying you have to act on those, but
Right.
you just got to be able to
listen.
take it in.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, because like you said, you never know what you're trying to get. I mean, to me, coaches are always stealing something.
That's right.
I mean, very seldom do you really come up with something on your own.
You know,
A lot of
there's
times
been
you stole
a baseball coach and a football coach, right?
it.
When they steal stuff, baseball coaches actually share. Football coaches kind of steal it.
Can't steal it, hang on
They
to
keep it. Yeah, they keep it for their own.
No, I just.
Y'all share.
We do. And then, the other big thing is I think just being very open and honest. I think the more you're open and honest on the front end, it really deters a lot of your problems down the road. When you try to just constantly, think that you can make everybody feel the same way, because I can't. You're not going to. You're not going to make everybody happy.
That's right.
The one thing about baseball is when it comes to substitution and the game, the way the game is laid out, you can't play everybody, and it's not easy to get people in the ball game and things like that. So you have to let them know what their role is or what your expectation for them is at that moment, and just give them the opportunity each and every day to change that role if that's something that they want to do. Because I tell them all the time, I don't make the lineup, you do.
Right.
You determine whether or not you're in the lineup or not. I was never a player that when the lineup got posted, I had to go look at the lineup. I wasn't that guy. I knew if I was in the lineup or not, based off of what I did. And kids today aren't like that. There's a lot, very seldom, especially, at the level I've been at here in the last 15 years, is the fact that when you post a lineup, it's like everybody's got to go look at the lineup. Am I in it or am I not? Because they're all worried about themselves. And to me, if you're doing what you're supposed to be doing each and every day, you know if you're in that lineup or not.
Yeah. Do you teach that on your team?
I do.
You kind of tell them like, hey, don't worry about if you're in or not. Know that you're part of this team, and if you're good enough, your peers are going to also know
That's right.
if you're on this team.
Well, the biggest thing I tell them is if you're constantly comparing yourself to the guy that you're competing against, then you're never going to catch him. Because you're too worried about him and not worried about what you've got to do. Focus on yourself. If you'll do the things that you got to do to get yourself better each and every day, I promise you, we'll see it. Right? Coaches are going to put whoever's out there. The goal for us is to win, right? And we got to find the pieces to make that. But coaches each and every day are looking for the guys that set themselves apart. Who is focused on themselves at getting better and not worried about someone else, because you can't control what they control.
Yeah, that's great advice, not only for high school athletes, that's CEOs of organizations trying to compare, am I reaching the level of sales that this guy is? Worry about yourself.
Yeah.
And everything else will kind of take its shape. So, on the flip side of that, what's your biggest disappointment? What's in your coaching career, one of those moments you're like, man, I would have done this differently?
Wow.
It's kind of a loaded question.
It is.
Because we all have those accomplishments. We all have those feel-good moments, whether we're coaching us, whatever, right? But sometimes we're like, man, I learned from this, and I know not to make this mistake again. For me, it was in a track situation of, running a kid versus not running a kid, and hindsight, should have gone with the other decision.
Yeah.
So is there anything?
I think, and this probably goes back to probably one of my first, probably my first, second year of coaching.
And that's when it's going to happen, right? Early in your career, because we get better with age.
I had a kid who was really good. His name was Brian Wimberly. I'll never forget him. He was a really good athletic arm. Got hurt right there at the end of the season in a car accident. No, it wasn't a major car accident, but just kind of got banged up a little bit. And he went out, threw a great game one. We won. Come back, we lose game 2 of the series. And I'm getting ready to go into game 3, and we had a rain out, so it was like he was able to come back. And he kept telling me, Coach, I just don't know. I think my back's tightening up, and I'm like, I don't need you to throw a whole game. I just need you to give me a couple innings or whatever. And it's like I had to constantly try to convince him to do it instead of him wanting to do it. And then I had this sophomore over here who just threw game 2, like literally, who was nowhere near ready to be out there, but was begging for the ball. And I wouldn't give it to him because I was like, no, you just threw almost a complete game a day ago, and like there's no way. And then later down the road, I'm at MRA, 2012, we're playing Park Lane for the state championship. I got a guy that I know he's about gassed, and all we need is 3 outs. And I was ready to bring in our closer. And I go out there, he gives up a big hit, leadoff double, I think, to start the inning. And their best hitter's coming up right behind him. And I go out there to talk to him, and he looks me in the eye and says, you ain't getting this ball from me. He puts it behind his back. And he says, you're not getting this ball from me. I'm like, look, you've done an outstanding job. You've done exactly what we needed. I'm going to get ready to hand this ball over to Peoples and let him finish this thing out. And he goes, no, you're not. And when he said that, immediately I thought back to that kid back in my early years.
Yeah.
The kid that wanted the ball, that's the guy. And so he was not going to give me that ball. And so I told him, I said, fine, then you better strike out this next guy. I walk off. He struck out that next guy.
I was about to ask, what did he do?
We get the next 2 outs, we went 4-2.
There you go.
Won the championship.
That's a great story. But one of those coaching moments where you take something that you learned earlier in your career and now apply it to that, at that point, probably 13 years, 14 years down the road. Kind of a weird question. We're getting to our signature part of the podcast, but John Gordon talks about your carrying trademark, what sets you apart. So for me, my carrying trademark is that I wear Jordans on the sideline every Friday night. So everybody knows I'm going to wear a pair of J's, which it doesn't have to be J's. I also write notes to our student athletes, right, on those game days. But what makes you different from other leaders? Like, is there anything that you do differently? Is it your leadership style? Is it maybe you go around and you high five everybody or whatever? Is there anything that sets you apart from any leader in this country?
It was a good question.
Yeah. Because you're in the position that you are because of your leadership style.
Yeah. I truly believe. I think just the way I carry myself, the way I relate to the kids, and the way that somehow I just draw them in. I guess would be my trait.
Piper, man.
I mean, I just think the relationships that I've had with guys over the years is just remarkable. I mean, I still got guys that graduated back in 2016 that are like little brothers, really. I mean, we still do things today with each other. I mean, they take me hunting all the time. They just always want to do something, hang out, or come by and do things like that. So, I mean, it's one of the things that I felt I've kind of lost in the last couple of years.
Is it maybe because when you were assistant?
I think it was mainly because, one thing I think about coaching, especially with the staff, I think sometimes you have to have good cops and bad cops.
Oof.
And in the beginning, like when I was with Coach Bovette in the beginning, I was the good cop. He was the bad cop. And then as we got going, and then as my son grew up, because my son grew up all the way through. I mean, the luxury that I've had at MRA, my first year there, my son started K3. He graduated there. My daughter's graduating this year there, the same school all the way through. And when he got to high school and started playing for us, he was lucky enough to, as an 8th grader, to play on our JV and played some varsity games as a 9th grader and started as a 10th grader and played shortstop through us the rest of the way through. Him playing in those years, those last years, began to get tough because not only was I dad, I was coach, but I wasn't the head coach. And so I had to try to, there would be days where he'd get frustrated with Coach Bavette. Coach Bavette would get frustrated with him. And I'm like stuck in the middle.
Yeah.
You know, I'm like, am I dad or am I the assistant coach? You know, and I kind of saw a difference in me to where I knew kids were not kind of coming to me like they used to. And I think because of it and the difficulty of it, I was starting to become the bad coach as well. And Coach Bavette even saw it's like we didn't have a good coach. It was like that we were both hammering them from both sides. And
There's
so,
no, like, kind of like an outlet for
it
them.
was. There was no outlet. And so for me, that was the first thing that I knew and that I saw and recognized that I had to change. And that was when I told all my players when we had our first meetings with that, you're going to see a different side of it you might not have seen in the last year or two. Because for the most part, all these players are new that didn't see me on the fun side. And so that was what I really used this fall for, was to not only allow them to have fun, but to me to have fun with them. Let them see me
As a person.
as
a human
person, and not always just beating them down or challenging them or getting on them, and just seeing a more, hey, this is who I was, and this is who made me who I was. Yeah. And let's get back to it.
Yeah, you can see a difference, and we've alluded to that earlier. But it's just a point where you see those guys in the weight room, and even when they're bebopping on a Thursday afternoon, when y'all didn't have anything, y'all lifted in the morning or Friday morning when it was, and they're bebopping like, man, we got a day off. And they're like, no, we lifted this, we got our work in. And you can kind of see the tension, I guess would be the best word for it. The tension come from them of like, he values us as a human rather than just a number on a jersey that's going to play in the spring.
Right.
So you can definitely see that. So as we wrap up, one day you're going to hang up the proverbial whistle, right? You're going to fill out your last lineup card. What do you want your legacy to be?
I really want my legacy just to be the guy that, did it the right way. He was a guy that was definitely for the kids. It had nothing to do with how many wins he had nothing to do with how many championships he's won. It was just the fact that he poured into kids each and every day. In this world today, divorce is becoming more and more rampant. And you never know what a kid's going through. And I've gone through it several times. Went through it as a child, went through it as a parent, and just knowing that they have someone that they can always come back to. I think the biggest joy I have is when I have former players reaching out or inviting me to something, or just seeing them at their kids' stuff and still relating back to it. It's just how personal I was with the relationships.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Because you see a lot of coaches who, and I guess this for young coaches that are probably listening to this, they are about those, how many wins, how many championships, how many players make the All-Star game or All-State. You have those kids that go back to the very first part of our podcast, talking about numbers, and it's not about numbers.
Right.
So it's nice to hear that, as those coaches get older, they're like, man, it really does go back to the heart of what it is. It's those kids. And if you think about it, if you don't have the kids, you don't have the sport.
No.
So you got to have coaches that care more about the kid as a human. So that's awesome. Is there anything else you want to add as we close up the first edition of the OCR Lounge? It's been awesome to have you on. Incredible journey. I mean, I've taken notes the whole time we've been on here. These will be in the show notes, going through what you can listen to. But anything else you'd like to add?
Just like to get a lot of people out in spring and come support and watch our games. One of the things that I've challenged our moms with is to change the atmosphere at our games. I love going to some of the places that we play and the atmospheres that they have, and I've really challenged our moms to raise their level and to get our fans involved and just create a great atmosphere, just like we do on Friday nights.
That's right.
I think on Friday nights we have an outstanding atmosphere. We have light shows, we have music, we have things going crazy, there's people everywhere. So, and sometimes baseball, as you know, it's the end. You know, school's almost out, everybody's ready to end it, and sometimes everybody's worn out. You know, and so I understand all that concept, but just looking forward to it. I'm excited about it. It's going to be a rigorous schedule.
When's your first pitch? What's the first pitch?
First pitch is February 13th. We're going to Hernando.
Oh, wow.
And then we'll come back, I think the next day, and play Oak Grove out of Hattiesburg. There's not a game on my schedule that I can say, hey, that's a winner.
Wow.
I mean, they're really not.
But you want that, though.
But that's what we like.
Yeah.
We like playing the best. We like competing against the best. And like I said, I think we got a really good squad.
And that'll do it for our inaugural episode of the OCR Lounge. Thank you to Coach Lipscomb for joining us in the lounge today. A few takeaways. To be a good leader, you have to be a good listener. To be open and honest up front. His relationships with the kids of being a good cop versus a bad cop and what that looks like in your program. And then one of the biggest takeaways, I think, for anybody in any organization is when you have goals, yes, set those goals, have fun, but don't be numbers driven. Whether it's in sales, whether it's in baseball, whether it's in football, don't be a numbers driven person. So Coach Lip, once again, thank you for joining us in the OCR Lounge. Thank you to Brown Bottling Group for being our title sponsor this week. Go grab a Pepsi today.